We do the pledge and an invocation. So I'd like to first ask Fred Whitaker, Councilman, to do the invocation for us.
Thank you. Welcome to the City of Orange. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Mark Murphy, the rest of our City Council, we welcome you. Please stand. And in the City of Orange, we recognize that our rights come from our Creator, not from pieces of paper. So if you would please bow your heads and pray in your faith as I pray in mine. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we live in a free country where we are allowed to be in the public square and express ideas, and that we are allowed to listen to others express their ideas and determine who among us will be our representatives. Lord, we just thank you for that freedom. Thank you for that blessing. We ask you to be with the candidates tonight as they express their views. Give them the words that glorify you. We also ask, Lord, that you be with them and their families as running for office is trying and a sacrifice, and that service is something that should be honored. We ask all of this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Fred. I'd like to ask City Councilman and Mayor Pro Tem Mark Murphy to do the pledge for us.
Thank you very much. Remain standing. Place your hands over your heart and join me in the salute to the flag of this great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you very much, Mark. So I'd also like to give thanks to the City of Orange and the City Council and City Manager Rick Otto and Deputy City Manager Irma Hernandez for allowing us to host this forum. I'd ask that all of you please set your cell phones on vibrate, and during the remarks from the candidates and Mr. Alexander, I'd like to ask that you don't cheer or boo or throw tomatoes or anything like that. There are no political signs allowed in the chambers, nor is there any campaign literature to be handed out. Please hold your applause for the end of the forum. Thank you. Just a little bit about the organization that I represent. The California Republican Assembly is a grassroots volunteer organization that has been in existence since 1933. We are organized into local units such as the Anaheim unit, the Tustin unit, and the Saddleback Republican Assembly. Those three units have areas within the jurisdiction of the race that we're considering this evening, the 68th Assembly. I'd like to introduce the president of each of these units. Let's see, first Benita Gagné, she's from the Anaheim Republican Assembly. Cynthia Cantrell is from the Saddleback Republican Assembly. And Jay is from the Tustin Republican Assembly. So for more information about the CRA, or if you wish to join CRA, please go to www.cragop.org. We are organizing this forum tonight for CRA members to consider the candidates responsive for our endorsing meeting in March, and for the community at large, and for the candidates to have exposure to you, the voters. We hope you find this forum helpful in your decision on which candidates to support for the 68th Assembly District in June, and of course again in November. June will be the primary, top two will go to November. The CRA is not endorsing for the 68th Assembly District tonight, and there will be no straw poll or raising of hands as to who won the forum this evening. We will consider an endorsement at our endorsing meeting to be held on March 19th. We are honored to have the four candidates here tonight. Each of them will introduce themselves at the beginning of the forum. Each of them will also be here at the end of the forum to answer any questions you may have. Some of them may have a table outside with campaign literature that you can, outside the chambers, if you wish to review after the program. This forum is being recorded courtesy of Professor Pete Witzer and communications student Harper White of the Chapman University. And they will be running the recording of the forum on their channel. I think it's channel 6 periodically. We thank Chapman for their service. We also want to recognize Tyler Samano is a volunteer who came at our request, at the CRA unit's request, to help us here. There may also be members of the media here, and we welcome them as well. Finally, please no food or drink inside the council chambers. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the moderator for this event, Craig Alexander. He's the Executive Vice President of the California Republican Assembly.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Normally, at these types of events, we recognize and honor elected officials, other CRA people. However, we're going to skip that because the desire is to have as much time as possible for the candidates to answer questions. Trust me, I have more questions. If I answered them all, we'd be here till about 11 o'clock, and we don't have that much time. Water bottles are okay, and there are some in the back that are nice and cold if anybody wants one. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm an attorney. I live in Dana Point, and my office is in downtown Dana Point. That's important for one reason and one reason only. I live outside of this district, so I can't vote for the endorsement later or for one of the candidates or in the actual elections themselves. I've not endorsed any of the candidates at this point in time. I think it's important that everybody knows that I basically don't have a dog in the hunt at the moment. Also, we announced this about a month ago. We did it very publicly. Dale and I left our emails out there. If another candidate had come forward to be here tonight, we would have welcomed them, but nobody's come forward. So these 4 fine people are running. The filing doesn't close until March, but we wanted to get this out early and have everybody have a chance to meet the candidates and get to know what they stand for. We have questions that we've come up with. The candidates have not seen those questions, although I will let you all know this is a forum, not a debate. And what that means is I will be asking each of the candidates the same question. Each of the candidates will have the same amount of time. The way this will start out is each candidate will get 1 minute to introduce themselves in order. The first one will be Alexia Delajani Bridges, who currently serves on the Orange Unified School Board. Then it will be former Anaheim Councilman Harry Sidhu, and then former Councilwoman Deborah Pauley. And finally, we're honored to have the mayor of Irvine, Stephen Choi, also a candidate tonight. Then the first question all the questions will have 1.5 minutes. Then that first question will be by Harry and then go on, ending with Alexia. And then we will rotate continuously on that basis. At the end, each candidate will have 1 minute to wrap up. Now, if possible, we hope to have questions from you all. The way we ask you to do that is Dale, Tyler, and Tyler. Please stand up, Dale and Tyler. They will be passing out 3x5 cards, and if you needed a pen. We ask that several things about your question. First of all, please print legibly. It's hard for us to ask the question if we can't read it. Secondly, a general policy question, please, not a question to specific candidate. Otherwise, the other candidates won't be able to answer that, and it's not fair to them. Also, a question that has to do with something that they're going to go to Sacramento and discuss. As an example of what they're not going to be able to do is to make a decision about the troop levels in Afghanistan, to give you an example of an inappropriate question. But they probably can talk a lot about gas taxes in California and things like that. So we invite you to have your question. Tyler and Dale, if you give them back your question, they will give it to Cynthia and Jay. They will go through the questions to make sure, A, we can read it, B, that we take out duplicative questions or inappropriate ones. We won't be able to get to all of your questions if we have a lot of them, but I'll do my best to slip in as many as I can. One thing I always tell the candidates at these things, first of all, please, we have our timer down here who will give you a 15-second warning and then a stop. A stop means please finish your sentence so that the next candidate can start and we can get through as much as we can. The second thing is I do my best to remember the order It's more important that we do it right than that my ego is stroked. So please, candidates, tell me if I mess it up, and I'll gratefully accept your correction. We will do our best to get done about 8:40, inclusive of the candidate wrap-up. The candidates will be here afterwards to meet you, to answer your questions, and then the city's asked us to be done here and out by 9. Again, thank you for coming. I hope you find this informative. Please do put your cell phones on good old vibrate or off. And if you really need to take that phone call, please go outside, because it will interrupt us and it will end up maybe on the tape, and we don't want that. With that, I would like to start with the first candidate, Alexia
Thank you very
Delagiani
much.
Bridges. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. My name is Dr. Alexandra Delagiani Bridges. California was once known as a golden state. People used to flock to California, not just for the great beaches and wonderful weather, but for the jobs and the job opportunities. In fact, after my family escaped from communist Romania, they settled in the United States and ultimately in California because of freedom and because of great job opportunities here. Sadly, this is not the same California that my grandparents came to. High taxes, excessive regulation, excessive paperwork are driving jobs out of California and to other states. As an independent businesswoman and educator, I am very, very concerned with the direction that our state is headed. We can do better, much better. That's why I'm running. I will work to make California the golden state again. Thank you, and God bless you.
First of all, I want to thank the CRA for hosting tonight's candidate forum. It is great to be here with all of you. You know, we share the same conservative Republican principle and beliefs of limited government, free enterprise system, protecting traditional marriage between men and women, pro-life, and family values. And I'm an NRA member. You know, I came to this country 42 years ago with $6 in my pocket. And I put myself through college earning $2.35 an hour. Running for, I worked for the Hughes Aircraft for 10 years. After that, I got into a business. This is the only country which gives you an opportunity to succeed in whatever you want to do in life. I worked for close to about 28 years in establishing almost 30 different businesses. And I can talk a little bit about businesses, what I have been through in my lifetime, and what this California state is going through and putting us through ringer in putting all the small business out of business. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Pauley, and I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity that the CRA has provided for all of the candidates tonight. Politics is cyclical. Everyone who's been around for any time at all recognizes that. The pendulum swings far left, the pendulum swings far right, and when it swings too far, you have to have a course correction. We are in just that place right now in the country and most certainly in the state. We need a strong pull right for a significant course correction. This is a safe Republican seat. Everyone recognizes that. Even the Democrats will recognize that. What you're asked to determine tonight is which type of Republican you are going to be sending to Sacramento to represent you. I have represented this area on the Central Committee of the Republican Party of Orange County for a decade now. I know the district. What you need to decide is, do we want a moderate or do we want a strong, rock-solid, strong conservative who will actually take care of the issues that matter to you, to me, to our families, to Americans, to Californians and their businesses. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Choi, currently serving as a mayor of the city of Irvine since 2012. My election as a mayor gave us a conservative majority on the city council for the first time in 12 years. We took our city back from the liberal Larry Agron coalition. Prior to that, I served on the city council for 8 years, fighting for conservative principles against the liberal majority. I also served as a trustee for the Irvine Unified School District for 6 years before the City Council. It is my deep faith in Jesus Christ that led me to public service. I'm a conservative, have fought for conservative principles, and will continue to do so. I'm a conservative Republican because I want to achieve many things that we believe in. Most importantly, I'm a proud Christian father and husband. My family and we all attend the church regularly on Sundays. Thank you.
Thank you all. One thing is always something you forget, and I did. One of the rules is if a candidate has already spoken and then another candidate in the same question decides to, for lack of a better term, criticize one of the candidates, the one who's already spoken, at my discretion, I can give the candidate who has been spoken about 30 seconds of rebuttal. The first question for Mr. Sadhu. For several decades, Proposition 13 has required certain limits on the taxation of real property in California and how voting to increase taxes and other things are done in the legislature. Should those limits be changed in any way?
You know, with the real business experience in Orange County Republican values, I will fight to protect the Prop 13 and also keep the criminals behind the bars, which has belonged, and oppose all the tax increase. I'm the first candidate in this race who has announced to signing the official American for Taxpayer Reform Taxpayer Protection Pledge. And I know what it takes to balance the budget and live within our means. Taxes hurts our family and our businesses. Yes, I have already talked about earlier on, and you will see that it's coming up, that Senator Pat Bates have Prop 13 Bill 259 will reform assessment policy of commercial properties when 90% of or more property ownership changes and in a single transaction. Backed by the vanguard of Prop 13, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association and the California Chamber of Commerce. Unions already lining up against it. I will fight everything what it takes to fight for our Prop 13 to keep the taxes low. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Well, I actually cut my teeth on protecting Prop 13. When I first ran for office, I was protecting the end run around Prop 13, otherwise known as a school facilities bond measure, which is just one way to raise property taxes without actually doing away entirely with Prop 13. I have been endorsed by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association for my second run for Villa Park City Council, and also when I ran for supervisor a couple of years ago, so I'm very familiar with Prop 13. I'm also familiar with a piece of legislation that Pat Bates has put forward in conjunction with Bill Breaux, the assemblyman down there. It's actually cleanup legislation, because there were businesses, and everyone does this, when taxes are too high, they participate in what is called tax avoidance behavior. You try to figure out a way to get around paying such exorbitant taxes. That has happened with businesses. Some of that has been unfair to the point where now residences, homeowners, are paying more than their fair share of the property taxes into the state. About 79% of the property taxes that come into the state come from residences. This piece of legislation that is going to fix that will actually level things out and provide for justice in the property tax system. I am a firm proponent of Prop 13. There are so many benefits of it that the average citizen does not see, and one of those is the smoothing of budget process that occurs because of Prop 13. I will, of course, be continuing to fight for that.
Of course, none of us here will say anyone would jeopardize our basic tax law in California for the properties that we own. Prop 13 should be protected any way we can for either the personal or commercial or businesses. Once we compromise that tax base, it will kill our economy and then our personal income. And this is California's basic principle that we have achieved. So I think we need to protect that Prop 13 to the best of our ability, and that's where our conservative Republican principle comes in.
I am strongly in favor of protecting Prop 13, every aspect of Prop 13. Raising taxes on commercial use and businesses is just another way of running businesses out of California. It's like we're looking for every possible way to burden businesses and run them out. That's ridiculous. I'm serving my 8th year on the school board, and while on the school board, I have fought every property tax increase in form of a bond that has come up. So I will continue to fight for you at the state level. Thank you.
Starting with Ms. Pauley. At this time, the governor is proposing to increase the gasoline taxes and other related taxes and fees to pay for transportation, infrastructure, maintenance, and upkeep. Do you support the governor's proposals? And if so, why? Or if not, why?
Thank you. Of course, I do not support his proposal to increase the gas tax. The reason that he has to increase the gas tax is because the unintended consequences of the social engineering to get everyone out of gas-driven cars and into electric vehicles, and so the amount of money that's coming in or that they projected to come in is no longer there. We are already paying 59 cents a gallon on gas and taxes in this state, the 4th highest in the country. And yet our roads are at 44th, ranked 44th. That money's supposed to be going toward roads, and it certainly is not doing a very good job of it. The governor, if he would be wise and stop wasting money on high-speed rail and stop wasting money on how he can get people out of their vehicles and put the money where it needs to go, because you cannot force people out of their cars. This is just, it hurts every single individual. It doesn't matter whether you're a college student trying to drive to school or a working class family trying to drop your kids off at school before you head to work. It is cost prohibitive to increase the cost of gas. We need to be much more creative what we're doing. He says he has this huge budget, huge influx of money. If he has this, how can he possibly justify increasing gas taxes? The proposal that troubles me the most is the one where they're asking us to volunteer to test the idea of being taxed on how many miles we drive. They say it's going to be a substitute for the gas tax. I do not believe that for 1 minute. Once a tax is in place, it never goes away.
Of course, I don't want to increase our gas tax because that will again jeopardize our basic economic business activities. Opposite to the idea of raising the gas tax, I would propose lower the gas tax so that when gasoline is much cheaper, business activity will be stimulated. People would not be afraid of driving around and to do more business. When more people drive and the gasoline is cheap and more consumption of the gasoline, that will jack up the governmental portion of the tax. So I think a reverse policy will be good for the California economy rather than limiting the driving by raising the gasoline tax.
Our constituents pay the highest gas tax in the nation, yet we have the worst roads in the nation. To make matters worse, cap and trade has added an additional 10 cents per gallon. We need to increase the number of refineries in California. We need to drill to reduce reliance on the OPEC countries. Our dependence on foreign oil is a threat to our economy and our national security. We should not be doing business with countries like Iran or Iraq who supports terrorists.
Thank you for asking this question. You know, in the governor's recent budget proposal that he called for raising gas taxes and fees to start paying for the $59 billion backlog for needed transportation system repairs. One answer should be meaningful administrative fixes, not more taxes. Instead of taxing already overburdened taxpayers, the state should focus on closing the loopholes that allow millions of dollars to be diverted in the vital transportation projects. We continue to waste billions of dollars on boondoggle high-speed rail, and yet we can't pay for the infrastructure repairs we desperately needed. You know, I'm the only candidate here who understand what the gas tax is going to do to my business. I have a transportation companies deliver the food to me twice a week in all my restaurants. Guess what? If the gas tax goes up, guess what? How much I'll be paying? I am just the one example. 85% of the small businesses, which are the biggest taxpayers in the state, are the one I can understand what they're going to be going through if there is a gas tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with Dr. Choi, and one of the candidates must have been clairvoyant, knowing my question. Would you be willing to sign the No New Taxes pledge of the Americans for Tax Reform, and if not, why not?
Okay, which tax?
No, this is, would you be willing to sign the No New Taxes pledge of the Americans for Tax Reform?
I already signed, I believe, several months ago. This, my basic two principles that I want to put out. I think all the conservative Republicans will believe in no new taxes is my basic campaign pledge that I'm going to use. Number two will be creating more positive business environment. So therefore, any time when tax idea is proposed, this will be again dampening our economy. So rather than taxing higher and higher, driving our businesses out of a state, we need to encourage our businesses to stay with some incentives. I think a higher tax is not such a way to incentivize our businesses to stay and do more business in the state.
Absolutely. I will sign anybody's no new taxes pledge. I've made this pledge to the taxpayer, to my constituents, long, long ago when I first ran. So yes, I will sign the no new taxes pledge.
Well, thank you for asking this question, because I'm probably one of the businessmen who pay more taxes than anybody else put together in this candidate's form. You know what? Taxes hurt. Think about it. You get up early in the morning, you buy a cup of coffee, you pay tax. You go and fill up your gas, you pay tax. You go and sign up to pay your property tax, you pay the real estate tax. Taxes, tax, and tax. This state is the worst in the nation to pay the taxes. I'm the only candidate, and I'm saying that, only announced guy who has actually officially signed the tax reform, taxpayer protection pledge. I know what it takes to balance a budget. Live within our means. Taxes hurt our family and businesses.
Thank you. You know what, Harry? I'm going to say your name. I am really sorry that you have to pay high taxes, because it's just not right. I'm sorry for every single business person in here that has to pay such high taxes that they can barely make ends meet, because it makes it difficult for businesses to expand. Of course I would sign a no new tax pledge. I've built pretty much my entire political career fighting taxes of every sort. When I was on the Villa Park City Council, I twice agendized to do away with the business license fee in my city, which is just another way to say tax. You know, sometimes they don't use the word tax. And I tried a couple of times to get my colleagues to go along with me, because what exactly are the businesses getting out of that tax? Nothing. They're filling out a piece of paper, a form, and writing a check to the city so that they can have a piece of paper saying, yes, you have they do no background checks of any sort, and then next year they send them an invoice and ask them for more money. That's a tax. They call it a fee. That's a different name. I do know that 3 different times my colleague right here to my right, Stephen Choi, has had the same opportunity to do the same thing in the city of Irvine, and 3 times voted no to do away with that business license tax. You can say you're going to do it, but I think actions speak far louder than words. How many of you have been in the trenches fighting? Sacramento is a huge black hole addicted to money. More money, more money, more money is always their answer. I think we need to come up with a different answer.
Thank you.
Can I rebuttal?
Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, we had one of the lowest business license tax. You can call it tax or license fee. $51 was $50 and $1 for state tax. However, that when the proposal was made, I thought that was very, very unfair for our citizens because about $800,000 of that $51 was bringing into our cover. Whatever the difference when by not collecting it, our taxpayers, the general fund will have to make it up for the people who are not doing the business in our city. So that was a very, very unfair for
Time's
our
up.
citizens.
Thank you. For those candidates interested, I have that pledge here, if you can sign it afterwards. Came prepared. Dr. Delagiani Bridges, what is your definition of crony capitalism, and what do you think of it?
Oh, it's a terrible thing. It's when lobbyists are pretty much running the show. They pull the strings. They're in charge of what happens behind the scenes. It's terrible. It's when you, the taxpayer, my constituents, are not first. Their special interests come before you. It's a terrible thing. Thank you.
You know, in my campaign, I've been raising the money from the actual citizens of this country. They are the people who are raising money for me to run for the state legislator. And I know that some of my candidates are getting a lot of money from the lobbyist who is the home builders. And that tells you that why they want the home builders to be part of the giving the money to these folks. Because these are the lobbyists. They want to make sure that some of these people support their the issues that is coming up. You know, I have always believed in run a campaign, raise money from your individuals, donors, and if you look at it, my campaign, that it is coming from the individual, most of them coming from individual donors. And I'm proud to say that we need to stop this, the cronism that is coming, right, and making a major difference in Sacramento right now. Thank you.
Thank you. The question was, what is my definition of crony capitalism? I've been speaking about crony capitalism quite a bit because I see it as a real black eye because there are some Republicans that I would call crony capitalists. Crony capitalism is when you are picking winners and losers, when you are giving sweetheart deals, tax cuts, and rebates to special interests within your community. Some people confuse that with being business friendly. It is not. If a tax cut or a rebate is good for that specific business who happen to give money to you or a friend of yours, it's good for all of them. That is my belief. From my perspective, and I think from a lot of Democrats' perspective, it doesn't matter whether your special interest group happens to be a union on one side of the house or your special interest group happens to be one or more specific businesses. You are hurting everybody in the center, and you are not making decisions in the best interests of the people. And that is where we have a real problem in this country. That's one of the things that concerns me about certain Republicans. And I have railed against them many, many times. I've even named, I will say it, Harry Sidhu by name because I know that he is part and parcel of that. It is hurting us. It is hurting all the businesses because a tax break or a tax cut should be for everyone. That is what truly makes businesses run. And those businesses, the small businesses, the real economic engine of our country and our state, are rarely those who get that special deal. They don't have the money to buy it.
Thank you. After Dr. Choi answers the question, Harry, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you.
I want to just point out that two areas I think we need to really stimulate the small business activities because that's where real job creation and then our local economy will be boosted. So when we give favoritism to big corporations. I think that we are forgetting the local small business moms and pops businesses. So that's the area I'm very much interested in. If I had time, I can illustrate my activities as a mayor. Secondly, I want to tie this also to the union supported campaign funds that I have not received, but here, one particular candidate I understand has received a lot of union money in the past, and then I know that how union money can influence your votes, and that I pledge to you that I refused and then I have not received.
30 seconds.
Deborah, you never ran a business in your life. 85% of the people in state of California, they pay taxes to run the state. What are you talking about? You never ran a business. You look at outside people, how the economy is supported. Economy is supported based on the businesses, people who are doing business here. Now, if you, on a bad time, when the economy is down, when you're giving opportunity to the business people to come and do business in your city, there's nothing wrong with giving an opportunity to make some special concession to have to do business. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our question from the audience, and we'll start with Mr. Sadhu. Are you in favor or against the new Common Core education standards? And if so, why? If not, why?
I'm totally against Common Core. Guess what? If the Common Core is what is how we do business in state of California, that's why we are the last state in the nation to educating our kids. Think about it. Federal government is making all the rules, and we got to follow those rules. And guess what happens? You have the kids who supposed to be getting the math and science to be when the high school level, they can't even get the 8th grade level what they're getting the education in the state of California. I am totally against Common Core.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. I'm absolutely against Common Core and have been for a very long time, and worked actually to try to stop our state from adopting it. We were never called to be common. Americans were never called to be common. Californians were never called to be common, and I certainly don't want my children to be common. The fact of the matter is, we've adopted Common Core, and other states have adopted Common Core because of the federal dollars that are dangled out in front of the states and the state's governors. This was a backroom deal done by governors, and we have to hang the hat on the Republicans as well as the Democrats, who were more interested in taking federal dollars for a bad deal and selling our children down the river while they did it. This is, you know, I've looked at the math problems with Common Core as it's been instituted. You know, it does nothing but frustrate the minds of our young people. These questions are absolutely absurd, and the way they have injected social engineering into every single aspect of education. We've only implemented 2 portions of that, but as we get a little bit deeper into it, I think you're going to be really, really frightened by what is happening with our young people. This is why many parents choose to take their children out of public school, put them in private school, or homeschool them. But with the testing to get into college, all based on this bogus education system, what chance do our children have? We need to scrap this right now. No amount of dollars should be able to buy the minds and hearts and souls of our children.
When it comes to the question of education, I believe I have more experience than anyone on this dais. For 25 years, we have run after-school tutoring center, and still my family is running. And when Mr. Sidhu was yelling a while ago that nobody, I don't know who the question was directed to without the business experience. So I do have business experience directly for 26 years. So the after-school program that we have been operating since 1990, when this question came to Common Core, so many parents are frustrated and consulting my wife, and my wife directs that question to me. And with that, just to make the answer short, the Common Core ideal is very lofty, to teach our children for critical thinking and problem solving in a higher level. However, they are totally ignoring the basics, and the children don't have the basics. And that's one of the big reasons I object the Common Core standards.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Bridges?
As an educator with a doctorate in educational leadership, I oppose Common Core. This is essentially a federal takeover of our education system. It has fundamentally changed curriculum and lowered our standards. Opinion texts have replaced most literature in English. This is wrong. In math, showing your work, even though it's completely wrong possibly, counts just as much, and in some cases even more, than actually coming to the right answer. If you come to the right answer in your head, you will be penalized by it. This is wrong. Our children deserve a lot better. We deserve better standards, standards aligned with colleges, standards that will prepare our students for better jobs. Thank you.
Can I respond to Mr. Choi's answer on the education, but he talked about that?
It will be, that was not a ad hominem, so I'm going to move forward.
No problem.
First of all, just to remind everybody, please hold your clapping, et cetera, till the end. And candidates, please, when the stop sign goes up, please finish your sentence and let us move forward. I have another question from the audience. And I'm going to take the purview of being the moderator to adjust the question a little bit. First I'll read it, then I'll ask you the way I will ask it. Science has established that carbon dioxide produced by human activity is causing global warming. What will you do to advance and strengthen AB 32 to keep California in the vanguard of stopping climate disaster? And I will change it as follows. Do you agree with the premise of the question regarding, I guess, that human activity has caused this and global warming? And secondly, do you agree with the goals of AB 32? And if so, how would you strengthen it? If not, how would you adjust it? Oh, I'm sorry. Deborah.
Okay, very good, thank you. Well, I'm glad I would have adjusted it for you. I think that the entire idea of the fact that global warming is happening is as bogus as can possibly be. I remember being in elementary school in Columbus, Ohio, and it would be 15 degrees outside when I was walking to school. And when I'd show up in the classroom, we were told that we were experiencing another ice age. We were having global cooling. It was pretty easy for me to believe that, and that I was going to freeze to death like the dinosaurs. And when I'm on the college campuses here in Southern California in the heat of the summer, and I walk outside of the university classroom, and it is 95 degrees, and it blasts me in the face, I can understand why our college students actually believe that we're experiencing global warming. They only talk about it in the summer. Have you noticed that? And of course, they've transmorphed that into now climate change, because quite frankly, global warming has been disproven. It is not satisfied science. There are scientists on both sides. What will I do to advance it? Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, I will fight it because I believe the entire purpose is to control the behavior of the citizens. Cap and trade is a large measure of that, figuring out how they can get more money, more money, more money. Once again, the Sacramento fight song, more money, more money, more money out of us, and try to control the way we want to live our lives. This has nothing to do with liberty and freedom. I won't do a single thing to advance that cause.
The environmental issues related to global warming, this one I want to take a very balanced attitude. That is, I think our effort to keep our environments clean is basically a good thing. However, the theory global warming is entirely human caused is something that I have trouble with. So I think our continuing effort of environmentally friendly policies is fine. However, government imposed, it should be voluntary, all individual. We believe in, as Republicans, individual liberty and the freedom. And we all know what is good and what is not good. Instead of a government mandated, imposing, and then also cap and trade, changing, money and the credits, etc. This is all way of government taxing on the businesses. So therefore, this is an extreme measure that the government is stepping in and threatening the businesses to buy into that concept and then also stimulating the wrong idea of entire global warming phenomena is human caused. So this is really troubled government injected the theory that I would not believe in.
While it is important to keep the environment clean and the industry safe, we have to make sure that we are not using this to run businesses out of the state and not using this as an excuse to raise taxes. For example, adding transportation fuels to AB 32 cap and trade has increased the price of gas in California by 10 cents. That's another example of them using this as an excuse to raise our taxes, and this is ridiculous. Thank you.
In my opinion, it is all hoax. Because do we have a wall between Arizona and California? Do we have a wall between Nevada and California? What these guys in Sacramento environmentalists are trying to do is to force you out of business and get you out of from this state to next door. Think about it, going back to 60s, 70s, and 80s. We have driven all the aerospace out of California. Why? Because they use chemicals, which is actually bad for the environment. Think about all the car manufacturing in California is gone out of business from the state of California. Why? This is all hoax, my friend. This is all a money-making business for some of the environmentalists coming in to say, you know what, Harry, you own a El Pollo Loco. We're going to stop you to put some of these charcoal that you're burning to try to cook some of these chickens. We're going to put some of the stuff right on it so you can't feed the people who live in California. This is exactly where they're going. If that's exactly what we are looking for in the future, in my opinion, it's a hoax. It's completely a nonsense which direction these guys are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with Dr. Choi, do you support AB 775, the Reproductive Fact Act of last year? For those of you who don't know, that's the one that requires pro-life centers, compassionate pregnancy center, whatever you want to call it, from putting a pro-abortion message up on in their waiting rooms. And if you don't, why not?
Yeah, I need to declare I'm a Christian. As a Christian, I'm a pro-life believer. Whatever reasons that people try to jeopardize a human life, I would definitely oppose. And any bills that will try to compromise our human lives is basically wrong. And I will do my best to stop such bills introduced and protect our the infant, unborn children's lives.
I am a Christian and strongly pro-life. I will do everything to protect the life of the unborn. I'd love to see Planned Parenthood defunded. That is one of my goals. I will fight for the unborn. Thank you.
You know, it's amazing. If anybody Parenthood, you go and look at the buildings when, there is a video out there that talk about how in Orange County, some of these guys are selling the body parts of unborn kids. I have, myself. This has to be funding has to stop. I'm a pro-life guy from day one, married for 32 years to my wife and have 2 beautiful kids. We need to stop this Planned Parenthood, what they are doing in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that I'm running with a couple of other Christians. I'm also a Christian, and biblical principles absolutely inform my policy position on this. I am of an age where I can remember the debate about Roe v. Wade and whether or not we should have abortion in this country. And I remember being a young person and being told that they would only be done in the first trimester, when it was just, the baby was just, it wasn't even a baby, it was just a little blob of cells. It wasn't, really a creature at that time. And, I was a young mind. And so I thought, well, okay, that kind of makes sense. But as I grew older and I saw what ended up happening and the horrible, horrible slope that we slid down, once you cross that line between not respecting the God-given right to give and take life, that's God's place. That is not man's place. Once you have passed that line, you've gone into a very dangerous territory. We have gone so far in this country where it's not the first trimester now. It's partial birth abortions. It's late-term abortions. It's abortion doctors actually having nurses snip the cervical or the cord of the baby as they're coming out still alive, or setting them to the side and allowing them to perish because they were born alive to someone who thought that being a mother was going to be inconvenient. This is a sad, sad state of affairs for our country. I absolutely would support saving all life.
Okay, starting with Dr. Bridges. Do you support or oppose SB 277, the bill that requires vaccination of school-age children for them to be admitted into public or private schools? And if so or not, why?
Parents should be able to make this decision based on what is right for their child. This is not a good thing for every child to be vaccinated. Some children might be allergic or predisposed to being allergic to some vaccines. It may actually be dangerous for some children. So I do believe in the parents' right to choose what is best for their children.
Senate Bill 277, mandatory vaccination, I totally oppose that. It requires students entering school to receive vaccination, removes the religious exemption. A gross violation of parental and religious rights. Absolutely oppose this.
Thank you. SB 277 first came to my attention last spring when I was running the ground game for Senator John Moorlach, and we had some phone calls from concerned parents. That's when they wanted to know what his position was on it, so I researched this particular piece of legislation. What it gets down to is the fundamental right. Who has the fundamental right to determine which types of medical or health procedures should be done on the child? Is that the parent's right, or is that government's right? That's a very scary situation when you think that government could be usurping the God-given right of the parents to make those kinds of decisions. What makes it even worse is that parents will be, of course, forced to pay taxes to sustain these schools, and yet if they make the decision that it's just too dangerous for their child to take these particular pieces of these immunizations, these shots, then they will be prevented from getting their child into school, both public and private, and into child care. This is not fair. It's not fair. I personally would immunize. I have immunized. But if what I was giving my children was a much shorter list of shots than what is happening now. I think if you look at the list and see how many shots are given to our children, and all at the same time in a cocktail, you would be shocked by it. I was when I saw that list. I think this is a parent's right to make that determination, and since it's open-ended that any number of shots can be added, gets pretty scary. Government doesn't have that right
Thank
to
you.
do that.
Dr. Joy.
Glad to hear that everyone is expressing opposition. This is another example of a governmental intrusion to personal lives. I stated a while ago, we Republicans believe in individual liberty and freedom. This should be left to the parental decision. That's their choice. And who doesn't know what is good for their children? Every child has a different situations, and the mother and father will know, not the governor, not the legislators. So therefore, I strongly believe that this type of mandatory requirement for children's vaccination should be abolished.
Thank you. Next question is starting off with Mr. Sadhu. As an assembly person, you don't have much control over national security. However, given the attacks on our fellow citizens recently in San Bernardino, what legislation would you pass, repeal, restrict, etc., to attempt to prevent another attack like that happening again?
It's a very interesting question because, like I mentioned before, I came to this country 42 years ago legally, and proud to be an American. What is happening in Sacramento, healthcare for undocumented, Senate Bill 4, I totally oppose it. What's happening is these liberals are keep giving these opportunities to people to come and make a heaven in our state. I'm totally opposed it, and I totally believe that being what it takes to come to this country. It took me 4 years to come to this country. Guess what? People who are in this country illegally for almost 11 to 12 or 13 million people, I really, truly believe that they have broken the law. People who have broken the law should go back to their country and apply for citizenship to come to this country again. In my opinion, and I think federal law is very relaxed to have some of these businesses. I'm the only one who can talk about e-verifying, if anybody has ever done that, because I know what the undocumented workers who work in this state of California. It takes a lot of courage because for us to go and fight, and we are the one taxpayers who is footing the bills to pay for some of these people. Thank you.
Ms. Polly.
Thank you. I've actually been on the forefront of this issue for a number of years now. Most of you know that I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force active duty military, so I'm very familiar with some of the outside threats, and I'm a co-founder of the Counter-Jihad Coalition of Southern California. I have many people that I've worked with in this area. One of the things that I think we should put forward is American laws for American courts. Many states have already passed that piece of legislation, and that means that Sharia law is not acceptable law in the United States of America. So that's one thing I would try to put forward. And I would try to find amenable Democrats that already see the threat. Many people see the threat for what it is right now. I've been talking about it since 2011 when we've had radical imams in this country, in our state, in Orange County, on the university campuses, stand before the Muslim student unions and actively working to recruit homegrown terrorists. I stood up then and I took quite a hit for doing so, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because I believe this is the biggest threat that our country faces right now, our state faces right now. If we put the right message forward, the neighbors of those two that perpetrated the crime in San Bernardino would not have been afraid of being called names or berated or called Islamophobe. They would have gone to the police as they should have. If you see something, say something. We need to start standing up for America, Americans, and American values. That's what I would do. I've already done it.
Certainly, national security issue is a very serious issue that this country is facing. If there's anything that at the state level that we can help, would be I would strengthen our Republican principle protecting Second Amendment, gun ownership. This is one way that we all will have a right to possess weapons and protect when it's necessary. This is a way of discouraging such violent activities that we never can anticipate where and when that's going to happen. And then also, if there's any state can do, will be secure more funding to give to the local governments, such as cities, so that the local measures will be strengthened. I'm so proud to say that the city of Irvine has had the record of being named as a safest city in America for 11th straight years. This just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of careful pre-planning and then execution.
The safety of my citizens is a top priority. There are many, many things we need to do. We need to continue to fight to build that wall between us and other countries. We need to protect the Second Amendment. If, for example, in San Bernardino, there were people armed on our side, them coming in with arms, they'd be running out the other way. Third, most importantly, we need to really screen who's coming into our country. I know this is not popular, but look, we need to even look at social media. Employers do this. If employers can do this, colleges look at, for example, Facebook. If they see students getting drunk, they say, no, you're not coming into our school. If we see someone post anything, even remotely anti-American, on any type of social media and game center, etc., you're not coming into our country, period. Thank you.
A related question, and we'll start with Ms. Polly on this one. Should California pass legislation to make the state a shall-issue jurisdiction for the issuance of a concealed carry permit?
Absolutely. I'm also an NRA member. As a member of the military, that's kind of normal. I think a lot of folks are. I believe that they've tried so many different things in the state of California. They are the leading edge of how to try to subvert the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms that all American citizens have. And yet it hasn't done a single thing to reduce crime in the state. What ends up happening when you try to pass these laws, the only people that abide by these laws that are passed are the law-abiding citizens. The criminals could care less about the laws. That's why they're criminals. They break the law. And I think that people should not have to work so hard to exercise their Second Amendment right. And it also, the other problem is this: it puts our law enforcement, our sheriff, for instance, in Orange County, in a difficult situation because the laws are constantly, what does the court say? Should I issue? Should I not issue? It really shouldn't be a decision that they have to make. It should be just, here's the national law. The federal law should trump state law. You have the right to keep and bear arms. You shall issue. Thank you.
Okay, I already stated that Second Amendment right to bear arms is either that's concealed or otherwise. It's a right to bear arms, concealed arms. It should be. This is when I come to America, I try to understand why this is so important issue. And I began to realize that when I come from Korea, where no individual weapon possession is allowed, America, from the beginning, pioneers, there's no law. Individual, they had to protect themselves. When the pioneers came to the West, and therefore that the tradition is totally embedded in the culture. And we are the country of immigrants, made up of all the immigrants from different culture and background and beliefs. So I think this is the place to keep the order and the protection of individuals. Now I began to understand why such a right to bear arms is so important. When you carry an arm, do you have to hold it all the time? Hey, look at here that I have. I mean, normally you will carry it concealed. So I think this is same vein that we need to protect that such a right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, absolutely. I'm for the Second Amendment. The bad guys get their guns off the black market, they steal them. They're not going into some gun show. They're skirting the law. We, as good citizens, have the right to defend ourselves. That's our constitutional right. Let's not let anyone take that away from us.
Thank you for asking this question. I'm the biggest supporter of NRA. Here's my card, because I own a lot of guns and wish the strict restriction in California is a little bit less. I like what is happening in Texas. Wish it can come back here. I will try to fight everything possible to repeal some of these restrictions and put the people behind bars, people who are crazy people, who do not belong to own the guns. So I'm always supportive of Second Amendment and wish I can change it, wish I can get more support from the liberals, but chances are less.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question with Dr. Choi starting off. Is it proper public policy for government to use the power of eminent domain to take a private citizen's property and then for the government to sell or give that property to another private entity for a private development project?
Absolutely not. Again, I think that also fits into our principle of individual rights and the freedom. When we live in the capitalist society, the individual property ownership is a basic premises that we honor. Why government will have such a right to take away the individual property, for whatever purposes? In particular, when improper dealings or favoritism is involved, taking one property from one person and giving to somebody else to develop under the name of redevelopment, I think this is deadly wrong.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're taking from one person who worked hard for their home and giving it basically to some developer. That's absolutely unconscionable. So, no.
You know, I'm the only one who's sitting here talk about eminent domain. Because when I served in Anaheim for 8 years, that we actually have the charter amendment passed throughout the city that prohibiting eminent domain abuse, restrain every one of them who can take away the advantage of that in taking private property. It is the property right issue. We should always remember people have the right on their property and government has nothing to do with it, take the property away. And I can ask, Mr. Choi, why didn't you ever do that? You are the mayor.
We did that in the city of Irvine too.
It's not been done.
I'll give you a chance.
I'm asking Villa Park, did she ever have the opportunity to take the property or to pass the eminent domain? No, they can't. Because the thing is, it takes the will of people like us, of the city council, to make this thing happen. And we have done it, and I'm proud of it.
I'll have Ms. Polly answer the question, and then I'll give Dr. Choi 30 seconds to rebut.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. I can also speak to eminent domain because I absolutely understand that home ownership goes to the heart of the American dream, and it's exactly what everyone works so hard for. They strive to have a home. This has to do with power and money. That's why eminent domain is ever abused. It is the prime example of the abuse of government power when land is forcibly taken and it's not taken for a good public use. That's the way I was taught it was supposed to be taken. If you had to take it in order to build a road or to build schools, it had to be for a good public use, certainly not for a private use. But what is happening is this forcible taking of private land and given to another private individual for the sake of money. I didn't have to pass something like that in the city of Villa Park because we are an outrageously conservative city, and it would never fly for us to even discuss it, which was why someone like I was elected there in the first place. We would never propose something like that. We would never permit something like that. But I understand in some of my surrounding neighboring cities that might be a possibility that they would even consider it. We would never even consider it.
Dr. Choi, 30 seconds.
Okay, it's very funny to hear Mr. Sidhu keeps on saying, I'm the only one, or this and that. I mean, how can you say, what the difference so far have you heard that he was so unique? We in Irvine, also 5 to 7 years ago, we adopted ordinance to oppose eminent domain.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, next question starts with Ms. Bridges. Do you accept financial contributions from government employee unions, and have you or will you in this campaign?
No, and I never have.
Thank you.
I have no intention of getting any union money running for 60th Assembly District. If it's ever come back to light that I did it previously, I can point fingers at a lot of other people that they have done that. I can go back. But I will never accept union money for 60th Assembly District that I'm running for. Thank you.
Ms. Polly?
Yes, but we are running for the 68th Assembly District, not the 60th.
68th.
But
I
you
said.
go ahead and run for the 60th.
68.
That actually
68.
solves at least one of my problems. I Googled myself the other night. Don't think anything bad. You know, it's a good thing to do every once in a while. And someone had created a pie chart about where I get my money. Deborah Pauly. I don't know who did this. Pie chart comes up. 0 money from unions, 0 money from lobbyists, 0 money from special interests. 5% of my money comes from businesses, and 95% of my money, campaign contributions, have come from individuals. I don't take money from unions. I prefer to take my money from individuals. I prefer those little $50, $25, $100 donations, because that means that somebody is so moved that they want to help me, and quite often it's someone who's never participated in the political process at that level before. I've had so many people tell me, you know, I've never felt like donating to anyone, but I would like to donate to you because I believe in what you stand for. And those donations mean the most to me. I really am all about representing the people, staying connected to the people. That is what I'm about. And so I'm not interested in any special interest group, whether it be unions or big businesses. I cannot be bought. I don't want to be bought. I want to do what is right and good for the sake of the people I represent. I consider it a sacred trust. It's important that we do it properly.
Dr. Choi?
There is one area very unique. Only Mr. Sidhu is different from rest of us, is that he's the gentleman who received the union money, as far as I know, somewhere up to like $2 million for numerous positions he has run in his district. I think that was including a supervisor's job. I never received, no union offered me money, and then I never received. Even my police department asked me to interview when I was running for mayor. Do you know what my answer was? No, thank you. Stay out of politics. And then that caused a lot of trouble later. Hey, police officers are very mad at you. I told them to let them save their money, stay out of local politics. And that was a very easy money to receive and an endorsement from your own city police association, but I refused. But even in the future, because of my background, no unions will offer me such a job, such a money or endorsement. So be assured that I'll be clean from that
Thank you, Dr.
receiving any
Choi.
union money.
Mr. Sadhu, you'd like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it is very interesting to hear Mr. Choi talk about that previous 8-10 years ago. You know, Mr. Choi, if I go back to the history and find out exactly where you came from, what are the stuff that you have done, I can bring all the stuff back to your history. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not one of those person. I talk about this 68th Assembly District. Are you taking any money? Are you willing to take any union money? I'm not, and I will never will. Thank you.
Okay, a related question, starting with Mr. Sadhu. Have you or will you seek the endorsement of any government employee unions? Not their money, their endorsement.
Absolutely not.
Thank
I
you.
will not take the endorsement from any of the unions, and I refuse to meet with any one of them. Thank you.
Ms. Polly?
No, I have not, and I don't intend to, but I will talk with them because I will be representing law enforcement and firefighters, and so I want to know what their issues are. I have spoken with them, and we agreed to disagree on many issues, but we have to keep the door open. It's important for me to be completely well-informed from everyone when I'm making these decisions. I've received the endorsement from veterans organizations. I am hopeful that I will receive the endorsement of the California Association of Realtors. These are the kinds of individuals that I'm seeking endorsements from. I've received a lot of endorsements from different business owners, small business owners. Those are the people that I want to represent. So. Or want to be most closely tied to. Those are the endorsements that you will see on my website, and you will see quotes from people like Phil Liberatore, the IRS problem solver. He sees me as a tax fighter. He knows that I am. These are individuals that are supporting me. I don't need the endorsement of the unions, but I intend to keep the door open so that I can hear what their issues are too.
Dr. Choi?
Yeah, there is a difference of when you receive endorsements from public employee organizations such as California Teachers Association, as you may know how influential California Teachers Association is. That's an example. If you receive an endorsement, typically their financial contribution will follow. So therefore, it is best to refuse receiving public employees unions. And last week, I believe California Firefighters Association invited me for interview. And then I had a very bad experience in the past, how it was just a perfunctory that I have interviewed you and we have chosen to somebody else, but I know where they come from. So that was a total waste of my time. And this time, I happen to have a city council conflict. So therefore, I have no intention of complying and bending my principles and begging for their endorsement. I already stated that if I have refused endorsement or contributions from my police association,
Thank you, Doctor.
you can tell who I am.
Ms. Bridges?
Simply, I do not plan to ask for any endorsement from any union.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got a lot of really great questions from the audience. I'm going to ask a few of them now. And we're starting with Ms. Polly. What is your position on civil asset forfeiture?
Civil asset forfeiture. Well, there's been I know that there's legislation pending that has to do with whether or not people have had an opportunity to reclaim. First of all, you should not be able to take the assets of a private citizen until they've been convicted in court. I mean, that's what I believe. You cannot just take something from someone unless there's good cause for doing it. I'm not an attorney. I would probably do what I do with most things. When I am not positive about what the proper policy position would be, I go to subject matter experts. And so in this instance, since I am not well-versed in it, I would go to attorneys who are experts in that area, and I would seek their good, wise counsel so that I would make the best and wisest decision. I've done that with many, many issues. When the audits from my city have come in, I've taken it to someone who's an expert in an audit. When I have questions about the best decision for realtors, I go to realtors. I ask subject matter experts. So I think in this instance, because I am not an expert in this area, I'm not well researched in it, I would find someone to assist me with that determination. I've only briefly brushed over it, so I cannot answer that question completely.
Okay, Dr. Choi.
Yeah, what forfeiture are you referring to?
Civil asset forfeiture.
Civil asset forfeiture, meaning that the private property forfeiture.
It means the police take your property when you were arrested without being charged or without being convicted.
That the forfeiture, the word itself sounds very negative. I don't think police or any authority should have such a right to forfeit your properties unless there has been due course process, the court judgment has been made. So unless you are proven that you are dangerous to have your own property or otherwise, why any authority, police or government will have a right to come to me and forfeit my property just because if I get stopped by police for whatever reason, then just being stopped by police, does that entitle him to possess my vehicle or anything else? So I think that sounds like invasion of private property without due course is something that I would not support.
I am definitely against this also. I don't think government has the right to come and take your property, especially before you're convicted. I think that's absolutely unconstitutional. Now, if after you're convicted, it's proven that the property was stolen or used in a crime, that's a different situation. Thank you.
I don't really know the law right now what is passed on the possession of the properties if person is not convicted. I think it all goes back to, if the law is that when they get convicted, they should take the property away, the police can, yes. If that's what they do, I think law has to be repealed. Now, whole thing comes down to is that a lot of the people, especially the police and highway patrols, when they confiscate the marijuana, guess what? Some of these guys are using for personal uses. These are the things that's happening, and I think that's where we need to have a very strong laws, how the police and the law enforcement uses some of these stuff when this has all been taken into their possession. And I think this need to be revisited back in Sacramento and talk about how this law should be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with Dr. Choi, another question from the audience. And I will be using my moderator's discretion to enlarge the question. California's unfunded public employee retirement fund deficit is now approximately $225 billion. What budgeted agency expenses would you work to eliminate to reduce the principal? My enlargement is beyond that. Is there anything else you would do to reduce California's liabilities in this area?
I think this should be my most favorite topic tonight because in Irvine, we would have had $120 million of unfunded pension liability. However, about 3 years ago, our council member, Christina Shea, and I took an initiative to direct our staff to come up with the measures, what the recommendations, what resources do we have to eliminate. Then claimed about to be about $90 million, but right now the total value would have been $120 million. Sure enough, they had a great idea and recommended that we implement our plan using our sitting assets, pay down, and then also a methodology of prepaying premiums instead of back ends. That would have saved like $33 million in total in 7 years, because 3 years has passed. Our entire unfunded pension liability will be wiped out. So we think, I think
Time's out,
strongly
Roy.
that we can adopt similar principles in eliminating the California state unfunded pension liability as well.
Ms. Bridges?
Legislators have really made a mess out of this with irresponsible legislation such as lowering the retirement age, benefit increases that are retroactive even, allowing for missed payments, keeping the contribution rates of the employee below the required level, and allowing for pension plan managers to make risky investments. While Governor Brown has made some strides into addressing this problem, a lot more needs to be made. So looking forward, need to fix and amend bad policy, make sure that employee contributions into their own pensions is substantially increased. Employees should be paying their fair share into pensions. Thank you.
You know, in city of Anaheim, when I was there, I took a very strong stand on the public employee pensions, especially police and fire. And we made the actual change that you can't go backward to change everything else, but you can go anybody forward, any new hires will be changed. And I was one of them, part of the whole council, that we made the change. Any new hires, this was going back about 4 or 5 years, 5 years ago, that we made any new hires will be to the new plan is going to cut down a lot of the unfunded liabilities. Now look at the stock market. When the stock market goes down, what happened to the unfunded liabilities? All these pensions are going into that investment. It actually drops. Guess who is actually funding? It is the taxpayers. It comes out of your pocket, right? This needs to be changed. Now, only way it's going to change is we elect a lot more Republicans to the state legislators, that we have the majority to change and make this a law to have some of the unfunded liabilities for the future. We do not want to be San Bernardino or Detroit. Some of these cities are going bankrupt because of unfunded liabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you know, I commend my colleagues there who have done work also in their cities to take care of the unfunded pension obligation. I did the same thing. When I first got on the Villa Park City Council, I noticed that the city, was actually paying the employee share of the contribution toward PERS. I said, why do they call it the employee share if we're paying it? So in a very logical fashion, 1 year at a time, we increased the amount until they were actually paying their full share. The ability to do those, and we've actually paid off our side fund too, prepaid our unfunded obligation. If you look at what we owe right now in the state, we're actually bankrupt. The unfunded pension obligation in the state would actually bankrupt us. But the state doesn't have the luxury of declaring bankruptcy and renegotiating its debt. Municipalities have a lot more freedom. You have a lot more freedom. I had a lot more freedom. When you get to Sacramento, the unions pretty much run and own everything. I worked really, really hard to get Senator John Morlock elected to the state Senate. And one of the reasons I worked so hard is he is a nationally recognized expert in this area. Quite frankly, if I were going to be elected to be the assembly member, he and I would work very, very closely together, as we did during that entire campaign, and I would work with him on the assembly side to carry forward his recommendations, because his recommendations would be right and solid and in the best interests of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. We are running short on time, So I'm going to ask just one more question, and then I'm going to start the candidate wrap-up. And that's always the most difficult one to end on. If you were elected to the Assembly, would you introduce or support legislation to give tax credits to specific industries, such as the entertainment industry, or to certain manufacturers? I think of Tulsa Automotive Manufacturing. And if so, which industries would you wish to have California assist? And I'm sorry, we are starting with Ms. Bridges.
I'd like to lower taxes for everybody. I don't want to play favorites with any one industry. So my goal is to go and completely change the system for everybody.
You know, when you give tax break, it has to be given tax breaks to everyone. You can't choose one versus over the other. This is actually a wrong way to start doing a business. Personally speaking, I always look at it that lower taxes is the way to intensivize giving some of these businesses an incentive to open up more businesses. That's how you make more money. You know, absolutely, I do not support giving just one industry over the other just because you want to have them stay in the state of California. I mean, I tell you what, we have the beautiful weather, beautiful locations. If they want to shoot here, they can shoot here. You know, there is no other place in the world where you can do business than California. We are the Golden State. That's why they call Golden State, to do business right here. But I will not choose one industry over the other. It has to be the statewide giving tax breaks to every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. I would agree with my colleagues. I would say that a tax break for everyone is a good thing. When I get to Sacramento, I actually have a different list of things that I'm going to be focusing on. One of those things would be, of course, protecting Prop 13. The other is probably transparency. That's where I will be spending most of my time, informing and educating the electorate. There's a lot of frozen-in-time legislation. For instance, and this has to do with transparency, public records laws that were enacted in the 1960s and the 1970s were written before the internet. And I know for a fact that many members of the media would like to see some of the public record laws updated, particularly with how it applies to the legislature. You know, we have, and all of us are familiar with the Brown Act, requiring, you know, that public records, if it's a public event, it's a public record, you need to make it available to the public. There's the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, is the same thing at the state level, but the legislature has exempted themselves. So imagine that. I think that I would be working on that, and I think for once a conservative idea would be supported by the media and reporters who are itching to get their hands on information. Transparency is everything. An informed electorate is the best possible electorate we can have. And so for me, allowing you to have the same access to information that I would have as a legislator would, first of all, you'd be able to help me by informing me on decisions as well. This is what we see. But it also is what America is all about. Thank you.
The idea of giving tax credit incentive for a certain sector of business, such as entertainment business, sounds quite interesting. However, I think this is fairness doctrine. If you think about doctrine, if you think about any particular area of industry, they are all special. You know, not particular one sector. So I've been dreaming, I don't know what kind of influence that I will have, maybe crossing the aisle, working with the bipartisan level in convincing my colleagues. Since California is fortunate that we share all the wealth of economy among the countries bordering the Pacific Ocean, I think this entire Pacific Rim countries forming special economic zone. Why not we make California, entire California, as a special free economic zone so that everybody can benefit?
Thank you, Doctor. There were some really great questions, both some of ours and some of yours we couldn't get to. For that, I apologize. So what we're going to do now, and I'm going to enlarge the time for each candidate to wrap up to 1.5 minutes. I will, however, warn you again, if one candidate's wrapped up and another candidate goes after the other candidate, I will give them some rebuttal time. And after we're done, if I haven't asked your question to the candidate or candidates, feel free to engage them after we're over. With that, Mr. Sidhu.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, all of you, and listening to us for almost an hour and a half. In closing, change can only come through strong, common sense leadership, and I can bring that change to Sacramento. The goals that driven me the chance to serve and get things done. The same core values propel me to the business, guide me in wanting to return good service and can-do attitude in Sacramento. I want to be a maker, not a taker for the taxpayers. That's why I'm passionately committed to this race. I've been endorsed by one of the most one of the leading Republican elected official, incumbent 60th Assembly Don Wagner, U.S. Representative Mimi Walters, State Senator Pat Bates, Bob Huff, Janet Nguyen, Young Kim is the Assemblywoman. Then I had 3 of the Orange County Supervisor, Andrew Doe, Todd Spitzer, and Michelle Steele. Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchin, Orange County District Attorney Tony DeCaucus, former Mayor Andrew Hamilton, Lake Forest Mayor Pro Tem Scott Voigt, Tustin Councilman, former Mayor Pro Tem Chuck Puckett. I have all these people that if you don't believe me, if you can believe them, because I'm the only most conservative Republican who can serve the Sacramento and bring the change to all of you. Thank you. And God bless.
Thank you. The establishment laundry list of elected officials that are endorsing some people is what's gotten us into the trouble we're in right now. Not just in the country, but certainly in the state. I call that the self-licking credentials mill. Quite frankly, what ends up happening is consultants have a clause in their contract that says you must endorse every other horse in the race. That's fact, folks, and you need to understand that. So when you see that list, you might want to think, wow, who has all the money? Where did they get all that money? And why do they need somebody there to help cover up for them? So that's what I'd like you to say. My modus operandi for a very, very long time has been to find good candidates and help get them elected. I actually went to a candidates forum when Stephen Choi, Jerry Amante, and Don Wagner were running for the seat that I'm currently running for. And I decided that Don Wagner was the best of the 3 candidates, and I supported him. Stephen wasn't the right man for the job then, and he's not the right man for the job now. I helped get Alexia Delagiani elected to OUSD's Board of Education. I held her first and only fundraiser in my living room. It was an ice cream social. She's done a good job there at OUSD. I hope she stays there. The reason I'm running is because I am the best woman and man for the job. I will go up there and I will do exactly what I say I'm going to do. You will not have to call me and ask me to vote no on tax increases or to walk and talk like a Republican. I'm just going to do what I've always done. I respectfully ask for your support on June 7th.
Dr. Choi.
The question before you is which candidate will serve you best? Which candidate will represent you best at the state capitol? Which of us can best stand up to the liberals who want to raise your taxes and take your liberties? Past service record would be the good indicator of the person for the future prediction. I can boldly say that I will truly be the one who will represent you and conservative values. During my time on the city council in the Irvine, I have helped expose and fix the Great Park boondoggle, stop up the pressure to raise taxes, made our city the safest big city in the nation, developed a program that will save over $100 million by paying down pension obligations, and fought to bring God back into our City Hall. Just like in God We Trust, you see that emblem, national emblem, will be housed in our City Council. In Sacramento, I will fight for the rights of the unborn, defend the traditional values, stand up for the Second Amendment, fight to stop the high-speed rail boondoggle, and stop the liberals from expanding government even more. My focus will be protecting us from the government over-taxation, over-regulation, and taking our
Time, Doctor.
freedoms. Your support is appreciated. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you again for having us here. It was wonderful speaking to you. There is a verse in Proverbs that says that the wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability. That's what I hope to offer to California when I'm elected. My strengths include my research abilities and my resourcefulness. I look for solutions. That's what I do. I have a unique background as an independent businesswoman and educator. I humbly ask for the opportunity to represent you in the 68th Assembly District. Thank you, and God bless you all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to first of all thank our candidates for running, for offering to serve, and for coming tonight. Harry, I know you want to speak, but that one's not.
I think you have said that you want to give an opportunity
Okay.
to rebuttal.
15 seconds.
Okay.
We need to end.
You know, Deborah, the reason people don't like you and they don't want to endorse you because you don't take the personal responsibility. When you got arrested and the DUI, that was the end of it. Think about it. You went to my treasurer to have the filed report, which was due on the 31st. What happened? You coming to my woman to ask to file the report? You still
Okay.
have not done it. You're still in
Time.
violation. Thank you.
Time. Deborah, you can respond.
I've already filed the FPPC report, Harry. People do like me. The voters like me, and that's who I seek
Okay.
to appeal to.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your patience tonight. The candidate, we have this place until 9. You're welcome to ask the candidates any questions. I'd like to thank any members of the press who are here, and a special shout out to my good friend Chris Wynn, who is live blogging this on ocpolitical.com. So if you don't want to wait until the kind people from Chapman replay this on Channel 6, go to ocpolitical.com and you'll get a minute-by-minute recap. Thank you all for coming, especially for our volunteers and the CRA people. Oh, and candidates, I have the pledge for you to sign.
Oh, great.
I'd like
know.
to